First at 11, Springfield native and former state senator Roseann Bentley has died at the age of 89. Bentley was a founding member of the Community Partnership of the Ozarks Board of Directors and also has the Springfield Public Schools Administration Building named after her for her decades of teaching and serving on local, state, and national boards of education. She was also a former Greene County Commissioner. 3 years ago, a musical playground named after Bentley was built at Phelps Grove Park in South Central Springfield. We'll have more on her life, political career, and community service coming up in our newscast this evening and also on KY3.com.